Grab your beverages and turn up your interweb. Solving the world's problems 12 ounces at a time. It's Dudes and Beer.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to episode 172 of the Dudes and Beer podcast. I am Chris Jordan, your host. With me, as always, is the stalwart and awesome Stephen Bishop.
What's up, listeners?
We are here in the cave in Austin, Texas. In the cave. And, getting ready for tonight's show. Can't wait to have him on. We've been chatting back and forth the past many days since I announced it. Mr. Byron Burkhammer, respiratory therapist, will be chatting with us. Two people that we have on in a month are both respiratory therapists. He and Dr. John Hall out of San Antonio. Whereas Dr. John Hall is also an expert in the field of electronic harassment technology, things like that. Good Mr. Byron Burkhammer is a treatment coordinator for Ibogaine, for the Beginnings Ibogaine Clinic.
Sounds really
interesting. We're going to talk about some of the new research coming up about this actually traditional drug used by Africans for many years.
Yeah, I was going to say many.
In Africa, as well as DMT and some of the modern treatments being used with that are now being discovered. And, of course, the long history of psychedelic
Tons
use.
of testimonials on it, how
Not just that, but tons of studies coming out on the use of mushrooms, which, of course, native tribes have used traditionally for years for vision quests and all kinds of things, even medicinally to get rid of spirits and things like that. So it's interesting that they're using these for treatment of social disorder, treatment of anxiety, treatment of hardcore depression, melancholia. It's really providing some changes that are tangible that we've been looking for in a lot of these disorders, and it's really wild. So we're going to talk about a lot of that. But before we get into that, let's get into the news of the week, everybody. Of course, on the Dudes and Beer page and group, mainly, come and join the Dudes and Beer group. It's absolutely free. It costs you nothing on the Facebook to come join the Dudes and Beer group. And there we post all kinds of news articles throughout the week just to spur conversation in the world amongst each other, because that's what this show is all about. Of course. Is the hard conversations that we can't have. You know,
we are 18 and up.
Are these treatments just new science, or are they things that we've known for thousands of years and are just rediscovering? You know, that kind of stuff. One of the most amazing stories that I saw this week was actually out of CBS News, where a man went to go get he had just started a job, was going to do his first day of work, and the night before his first day of work, his car broke down. He walked through the night, left his house at like 9 p.m., was picked up at around 4 a.m. by a couple of police officers. He told them he was walking to his first day of work. They went and bought him breakfast. Get this, man, not like for a programming company, anything like that. Guy's going to work for a moving company.
Wow.
Like, this is a job that most people, if they got it and their car broke down, and be like, I guess I could find another job. Right. You know, maybe I'm not supposed to go out and move people's homes for a living.
Job, dude.
Instead, this dude walks for 9 hours through the night to get to his job site. The cops pick him up, buy him breakfast, drop him off at the location that he's going to start moving. The woman is like impressed, number one, that this dude like walked through the night to get to her house to move her stuff. B, is so moved by his story, is trying to get him to share it with his coworkers. She's literally in her interview like, I don't think he would have even shared it had I not encouraged him to.
Wow.
And she went on social media and talked about the company and oh my God, this guy just walked through the night to come and move my stuff. Like, we offered him a chance to lay down before his coworkers got here, and he was like, no, just show me where to start.
Nice. Dude, that's some
and
dedication.
got straight to work. The CEO was so moved, he gave him his car. And that's why I was like, that's how it's done. And he was like, this is the guy that I want in my company.
That's some humanity.
This is the example of an employee that I want. Like, this guy, his first day, I don't know him from Adam. He has no vested interest whatsoever in coming in or making the effort whatsoever. He's not trying to say it. Like,
that's a cool story.
And then come to find out, like, he was displaced by Katrina, all kinds of stuff. So, like, his family's been through a horrible, horrible time over the last many years. And it was just a really amazing story to see amongst all the horrible things going on in our world.
Like that.
That was one of them. Another one off of Motherboard from Vice.com was a top voting machine vendor admits that it installed remote access software on systems sold to states. That's kind of slightly big. Whenever the people that provide the voting machines say, yeah, we installed some backdoor software before we sent them out. Only said, like,
not a big surprise.
Our friend Michael Davis, who's been on the show many times and on Dads and Beer, is actually judge of elections in his county, and he will not allow electronic voting. He was like, we will recount for days. I don't care. Yeah. But I will not allow electronic voting in my district. It will not happen on my watch.
Can't blame him.
And with things like that, can you really blame him? We, of course, discovered 12 new moons around Jupiter with new telescopic use. One of the big ones that I saw this week out of The Guardian was the genetic modified babies were given the go-ahead by the UK Ethics Board. So as long as it is in the best interest of the fetus or the baby, you're allowed to go in and start playing with the baby's genetic code.
Now, they already was modifying the eye color, the hair color, and stuff. So what are they doing now?
No. Nobody's ever allowed that. It's the fact that they could.
Oh.
They could. They could go in and do it, but it's not like allowed in any country. You can't go like, yep, I want a baby with green eyes, and they go in and give you a shot with some genetic stuff, and it changes. Like, that technology exists, sure, but it's not legal. What they've basically said is that it is now legal for you to genetically modify your child if it's like a worst case scenario, if it's showing the fact that like because of Amy's advanced age, quote unquote, my wife is not nearly of advanced age, folks, but it was considered a geriatric birth because she was over the age of 35 when she gave birth. So we got all kinds of crazy technology. It blew my mind to be in the birth class with people that were like younger than us, and they'd seen their baby like once. And it was like, wow, I see my baby every week in like 3D rotoscope. Like, they can rotate him around and stuff. It's crazy sauce what they can do. And we had to take genetic tests to make sure that, like, the chances of Down syndrome go up, all kinds of stuff. So she was under very careful watch genetically. Yeah. We had to sign releases, and we even signed releases for her data to be shared so that she could be part of the study, all that kind of stuff. But it was one of those, they can tell a lot about the genetics, what's going to end up. So if they can identify that and they can treat it, they're saying that, like, now research is allowed in that area. We can start researching on fetuses and things like that.
Very interesting.
So pretty wild. And to close things out, just on a note of previous guests, I have given our good friend, Mr. Caffrey from Las Vegas, the carte blanche permission to post anything regarding the Vegas shooting, because it just blew my mind that Mandalay Bay came out with a lawsuit against the victims today, stating that they were not responsible for anything that happened, because they have
the victims.
Well, and it was mainly a preemptive thing to make sure that they couldn't come back and try to sue Mandalay Bay for like negligence or anything like that. The two properties are totally separate. They abut each other closely, but it's not like Mandalay Bay's property that all these people were on, So it's a squirrely situation.
Yeah,
I can kind of understand it from the corporate point of view, but it is kind of one of those, like,
it's always going to be that point of view.
Wait a minute. Has a single victim come out and said that they're trying to sue you? Or have they blamed you for them getting shot? No. Not a single one of them has filed suit against Mandalay Bay.
But they thought they'd go ahead and do this.
They have made this preemptive move in order to protect themselves corporately, because they say that they have a security company that takes care of things on property, and that security company has passed DHS background and all that kind of stuff, and it's on them. And because they've passed these things, they aren't liable, so we aren't liable. and it's this really wild situation. But
Pass the blame.
It's just an odd situation going on with the whole thing over there. It really blew my mind that, of course, like we said on the show, good luck unseating the incumbent sheriff, and he did get back into office. So
Figured.
We'll see if anything actually comes out on that. And speaking of truths that need to be told, I am so happy to have this guest on. I reached out to a community that I belong to on Facebook, saying I would like to have a guest on to talk about ayahuasca experiences, things like that.
Yeah.
And Mr. Burkhammer got a hold of me, telling me that he was a respiratory therapist and that he actually works in the field of Ibogaine treatment, which is an up-and-coming treatment that has garnered a lot of study attention. Even whenever I mentioned it to the therapist that I was talking to this evening, about podcasting, he was like, "Oh yeah, I've heard some good stuff about that. I'd really be interested to listen to tonight's episode." So he should be tuning in. But I'm really excited to have him on to talk about how this traditional drug used by African tribes for years and years is now being looked at, and it's interesting. We have a long history of adapting this stuff from quinine to curare to all kinds of things. And you, as a respiratory therapist, I'm sure can attest to the use of curare, things like that. So let's go ahead and welcome Mr. Byron Burkhammer to the show. Welcome. How are you doing this evening?
Chris, thank you, Stephen, for having me on.
Absolutely. You like how I act like we haven't been talking for 30 minutes?
Hey, it's all good. All good.
I'm good at pretending. I'm really excited to have you on. Like I was telling you before the show, I myself am a person of deep spirituality, a lot of religious upbringing, but very much found my own spiritual way as life went on. Some of that came through the use of psychedelia, and through my spiritual want to find a realm outside of myself, which I participated in through the use of that. But tell us a little bit about the history of Ibogaine, what Ibogaine is. So many people don't know of the existence of Ibogaine to begin with, much less its actual origins. So let's first talk a little bit about how you became a respiratory therapist and came to want to help people to begin with, and what led you down the road of Ibogaine study.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll just be quite honest. I was a high-functioning addict. Now, I didn't start out that way when I started, working in the field of medicine. But I would go into ICU literally stoned, on opiates. And that's kind of scary. It really is. But, I was taking care of people on life support, and then, later on, other things too. So, I worked a lot in ICUs and ERs, a lot of trauma, a lot of, life support, things like that. Code, I had to go to code. I am ACLS certified, which means I have to go to every code that's called in the hospital. And, it's a hard job. It's stressful. If you're the only one that's ACLS certified, you have to intubate, you have to watch the monitor, you have to call the drugs, you have to tell the pharmacist what to write down. It's just, it's crazy. But the fact that I was doing that and in the state of mind I was in on the substances I was on, it got to be, a heavy toll. It took a really heavy toll on my life. So, I went to rehab. And just to be quite honest, I went to rehab like several times and it didn't work. I didn't, start into recovery. But what I found is I started to do some research several years ago. Later in my life, and I discovered Ibogaine, and I saw where it was an addiction interrupter. Well, I was really interested in that, and I wasn't, doing heroin or anything like that anymore. But still, I wanted to just to grow as a human, so as a spirit. So I started searching it out, and I started discovering where it came from, how it's being used now, and I got really interested. And so I said, well, I'm going to go to Mexico. I'm going to take that trip and do it, and take that trip, literally.
Like literally,
exactly.
But that trip is going to change your life on a deep, fundamental level if you want that. So that's what I did. I did that, I guess, in about, I want to say 2014. It was my first trip to Mexico. I'd never been to Mexico before. I didn't know what to expect. I was at Tijuana, Rosarito. No, I don't want to go.
Yeah.
A nice place, actually. Ensenada is beautiful. It's further in. But the whole Baja area, it's just very different from Texas.
Yeah.
It was certainly the flight from 110 degrees to 76 and beautiful is different.
Wow.
But yeah, I started learning the history of Iboga. How the Bahwiti tribe in Africa, they revere this stuff. Mm-hmm. This is their ancestral link. This is their link to who they are, their identity. And I was really fascinated by that. And I don't know, the spirit of the medicine started taking hold of me then. And, I actually believe now it's a consciousness unto itself. And it can reach out and connect with you. I honestly believe that.
Yeah. And, it's interesting that you say that, because there are so many of these drugs that begin as native drugs that are used by tribal people. Mushrooms, peyote is another. Like even the fly agaric mushroom that we see so many times in animated stories, things like that, is used by the Siberian people. Even possibly the source of like Santa's flying reindeer, because reindeer eat that during the wintertime and go crazy and jump around in fits. But they keep going back and eating it.
So was it the guy that ate the thing that saw the reindeer, or the reindeer ate it and then they decided to fly?
Well, that's where the theory comes from, is that people saw the reindeer eating this and behaving that way, and that's where the story of flying reindeer came from. But it just goes to show, like, more than anything, long history of its observation, long history of its existence. Even recently, I posted the article, did Jews use marijuana in the Bible? Things like that. And it was apparently part of some holy oils, things like that.
Right, yeah.
And if it was forbidden, like it was apparently forbidden during use of Passover. So if it's forbidden during use of Passover, it had to have been used. It's kind of hard to deny its use when God says, don't use that during this time, man. Yeah. When it's verboten during a certain period for personal cleansing, that means that that means they used it. Yeah. It's interesting to me though, because like I said before the show, and like I've said numerous times, I myself have had my psychedelic experiences. I consider them life-changing. I consider them life-altering. Right. I cherish most of them as very personal, spiritual experiences, because my desired effect was not necessarily to party. It was to reach something else. It was to either write music, specifically while in that realm, to connect with a higher power, to connect with myself in a different way. Like I told Byron before the show, it's how I used to start a new year, because I literally started a new year from a totally different perspective. I
told him, Steve, the healthier way to start the new year than most people do.
Yeah.
Really. I'm right on with that.
Pretty sound. And like I said before the show, one of my favorite movies ever is Easy Rider. And I love the scene where the hippie at the commune gives the character of Captain America the quartered tab of acid. And he's like, when you're in the right place with the right people, quarter this. And he's like, I'm hip with time, man. And that's the end of the scene. But that's really like the whole crux of the whole movie, is this journey to find the right place, the right time. And like I told you before the show, Steve, it's not even until he has the vision of the fact that they're going to die that he sees that this is the place and time.
That he made peace with that, right?
And that he made peace with that, and he was willing to spend his last time like this.
Right.
Now I might understand that movie listening to you.
Yeah, and it's because I've watched it so many times and in so many different ways, and it's really one of those movies that's kind of like watching a Quentin Tarantino movie where it's almost shot out of sequence,
right?
Yeah. And you really have to understand like his journey of trying to find himself.
Yeah, it's that journey.
You know, like he's got the buddy that just tagged along, but he's like, you don't get it. Like, I'm on a spiritual journey here, man. Like, I know you want to get to Mardi Gras, and that's cool, but we're experiencing something here.
Yeah.
You mentioned Quentin Tarantino. I was actually talking to a friend not too long ago, and we were, just talking, and he came up, and I was like, he's got to have been doing some kind of medicine, in line of work, and while he's creating.
Yeah.
And I know any artists do that, and that's what you and I were talking about. But it's a way to connect to something that's very real, very creative part of you.
Well, and I'd like to get into that, especially the part about it being very real, because that's where I think a lot of people get lost, is because they tend to view these things recreationally and not look at the traditional use behind them. Even LSD, things like that, that was derived from the morning glory seed. Like, that was traditionally used in brews and things like that, and tinctures that people used medicinally for madness, all kinds of stuff. So it's interesting that these now newfound scientific uses are actually directly in line with the uses that traditional medicine has used them for thousands of years.
Right.
And that's, go ahead and get into that a little bit.
These medicines are far healthier than anything Big Pharma's coming up with. These drugs like Seroquel, it makes you sick.
Man, I've heard stories of that.
Antipsychotic on a massive scale. I mean, I hear about people that are 20 years old, 25 years old on antipsychotics, enough that would just blow your mind.
Yeah,
and Stephen, you've seen it.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you're talking about.
They don't know where they are.
I know some people that are 20 years old that are on these things. And it's like, what are you like? Oh, it blows my mind.
Yeah.
Right. It's crazy. It really is. But you got that going on, on one hand, and on the other hand, you have a grassroots movement. People that are actually discovering, what we've known for thousands of years. Yeah. These medicines they change lives. Yeah. If used the right way, they're going to foster spiritual growth. They always do that. Yeah. They always do that.
Well, it's just interesting to me how LSD came about through clinical use. And of course was rapidly adopted by covert movements in government realms, things like that, because of people's actions while on them. And because it lets a lot of guard down. And you can very easily and rapidly
tell the truth.
Well, not just tell the truth, but you can very easily be manipulated into believing something. True. Into believing that something is there, into believing that you're hearing something, into believing that you will continually hear something, all kinds of things. You were very, very suggestive when under the influence of high-powered hallucinogens, which is why you have to be careful what you ingest when on them. Yeah. And I'm talking about like brain ingest people, not like what you eat necessarily. Yeah. But it's one of those. I remember I'll admit it here on air. For my honeymoon, I took some nice chocolates with me to my honeymoon, and I took them before I went in the Mayan cenote. And it was one of the most beautiful, amazing experiences I've ever had in my life, to have my crystals like on the Mayan pyramids and be in that realm, in that place, in that way. It was one of the most beautiful connective experiences that I've ever had in my life. And I chose to experience it that way.
That's deep. Yeah.
And I think that is a lot of what the stigma comes from, because, of course, many people my parents' age, even your age, you seem to be right in between myself and my parents in age, Byron. But many of the baby boomers especially remember the birth of the counterculture and the rise of marijuana use. Of course, some of them remember the tax stamp when it went through, and the marijuana bans, and the horrible propaganda that came out from that.
Around then, but I mean, I've seen it historically referenced.
Yeah, and especially rampant use of LSD in the public, things like that, for just sheerly recreational use.
Sure.
And
it's always funny that people, I guess, don't realize that it's been declassified now. The CIA planted a lot of that stuff on.
Oh yeah. They definitely did not discourage it if they did not contribute to it.
And I believe they.
Absolutely.
They were trying to use it to their benefit, where I think it backfired on them.
And you've said that numerous times on this show. I think that was absolutely the undesired result. Was that many people were awakened. Many people realized that there is this.
That's what I do.
This actual consciousness that we all participate in, whether we choose to or not. And in magic, it's called the egregore. It's a force that is kind of like the golem that you create to serve a purpose, but you create it to serve the purpose of a group. And it's a dangerous concept, quite honestly, because you're giving power to a concept.
You had people like Alan Parsons and the Jet Propulsion Lab, exploring this very thing you're talking about. So it's been used, and but consensus consciousness, it really has always interested me, and it's kind of just a little sidetrack for my exploration of consciousness. Well, how do we come to a consensus consciousness?
Well, and with that in mind, the concept of the universal consciousness, what was your experience? I myself, having just detoxed myself and not going to any kind of therapy for it. I just moved away and changed every aspect of my life.
Well, I tell you, are you talking about with the Ibogaine?
Yes, exactly. Whenever you went for your first treatment, what was your experience, and how did it change you in the way that you interacted with the world around you, not just as an addict, but as a person in general?
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm addicted to prescription medication at that time. The heroin addiction was in the past, and I literally developed some pain in my life, some real. And so I was being treated by pain management docs, and high doses of morphine, high doses of OxyContin, things like that. Fentanyl.
Common therapy.
Fentanyl. Wow.
Yeah, fentanyl. I was on 400 micrograms of fentanyl at one time.
Wow. Whoa. Wow. That's micrograms, folks.
That's some serious stuff.
They couldn't even treat me for pain. They couldn't even treat me for pain after that. I had such a high tolerance.
Yeah.
So, if something happened, I was just out of luck. I had to suffer through it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just realized I was in a situation, I was in a trap I wanted out of. And I realized, too, I wasn't really growing as a person. You can't really do that.
Yeah.
So I went to, looking into it. And like I say, I discovered Ibogaine. So I went down there. I did the flood dose. I noticed a change. That next morning, I was still having that gray day. We call it the gray day after you dose with Ibogaine. Because a lot of people, they're taking an 8-hour psychedelic trip, blood pressure all over the place, sweating, and, it just takes everything out of you.
Yeah.
So the next day, I feel a little bit rough. But the next day, I feel like I'd been reborn. That's just the only way to describe it.
Wow.
Literally. And it wakes up something in you. It's like waking up from a coma. It wakes up something in you that serves other people. That's, you realize the things that don't serve you, have to go. And so, it just starts to transform you. Yeah. And if you allow it, if you get really good support and therapy and help after that, you can just be a different person. And I have literally seen, Chris, addicts or heroin addicts with tears in their eyes telling me, I can't believe it's over. And I'm like, well, it's over if you want that.
Yeah.
If you continue on, it's over.
Yeah.
And, it's just amazing. And it gives me chills talking about it. I am passionate.
Well, and that's very obvious. And, as someone who went with my own struggles with addiction in life,
amazing.
It is one of those that, like you said, if you want it to be over, it's over. And, you can't help somebody until they're ready to be helped, of course.
Right.
But as someone who spiritually, even outside of the realm of psychedelia, has had that full-on spiritual connection, felt that connection with a greater being beyond myself.
Right.
That was something that I was always kind of grounded in to begin with. So it was something that whenever I went down my road, it was a definite denial of that. And I guess my struggle has always been since then regaining some of that connection, being able to find silence. I used to be very good at being able to just be still
and meditate.
I can't meditate anymore.
Learn to be still.
And it's because I've got to stay moving. And I know it's not a healthy thing. I know it's not a good thing. It's obsessive, and in and of itself is an addiction.
It's the pace of today. It's the pace of today. High technology, busy all the time. You know? But something I was going to tell you. Whatever brought this to my mind. But there's a lady I met recently, and this is kind of interesting. We were talking about how Ibogaine is used for addiction. Well, there's all kinds of addictions, and one that's kind of overlooked. I've never thought about it. This lady is named Karen O'Neill, and she suffers with bulimia, and I support her and promote awareness for her and her cause to effect. But bulimia is, one of those that's just never talked about, but it's addiction. And she literally struggled with that for 35 years, Chris. And then she did the Ibogaine flood. After that, it's changed her. She's like service to others now. She's down with Natai Wellness Center. It's a
fantastic
African retreat in Baja. She's working down there actively every day now. But she's just telling me, you've got to let people know that this even affects bulimia. Yeah. And that's a pattern. And what I was telling somebody earlier was that traumas of any type, even a narcissistic relationship, can cause chemical change in the brain. Yeah. And Ibogaine is literally a brain chemistry reset. It literally resets the brain.
Well, and explain some of that science. Explain some of what the effects of Ibogaine are. What it's like to do what a flood dose is. I saw that referenced numerous times on the on the Beginnings Ibogaine website. Feel free to go on to that. We have numerous links on our Dudes and Beer post for Byron's episode tonight, where you can go and check out the website, everything else. We flooded it with links, all kinds of stuff, because this is such great information that people are not aware of.
They need to know.
And just the fact that these treatments exist and that they're being explored is absolutely amazing. So explain to us what your personal experience was during the flood, what a flood dose is, what your experience during the flood dose was.
Well, what I experienced was pretty much the textbook description. I experienced the waking dream. In other words, you close your eyes and you're flooded with visuals. You can open your eyes and you can see everything around you. And there's like a shutter effect. There's tracers everywhere. Things kind of look like they're dancing a little bit. Oh. But you don't have that kind of effect when you open your eyes. But when you close your eyes, you just go into a deep dream is the only way to describe it. You see heavy visuals. You're just immersed in this dream. I took the test dose first. We do it in about 3 parts, the way we flood dose at our clinic. We give a test dose. And we've got a patient on a heart monitor, and an IV's been placed already in case we need to put some clonazepam down to chemically turn the vision off. Now, it doesn't affect the way that the Ibogaine is going to treat their body, but it kind of gives them some relief if they're in a kind of a tough spot. So anyway, I basically took the blood dose, or the test dose, I'm sorry. I took the test dose. The doctor was asking me questions. Are you hearing ringing in your ear? What do you see? Do you see any visuals? And I said, no, not really. And then he was gauging the specific sensitivity I had to the Ibogaine.
Sure.
And he was preparing to, or anticipating what the flood dose might be. So he was looking for different cues I was giving him. So I went into that for a while. The mood changed in the room. I don't know. I was just in a different place. Just a different place. I felt that dissociation. That Ibogaine's a dissociative psychedelic. That's the way it's described.
Okay.
But I felt that. So I just felt like detached, removed. It's hard to explain. But the next thing I know, it comes in with the first part of the flood dose, and we give it in capsules. He introduces the first part of the flood. We ease people into the trip. We don't want to just start tripping all at once.
Yeah, that's a hard reality.
So he gives me the first part of the flood, and he comes in and checks on me frequently, as does the nurse. And I started going to the dream phase after he gives me the second half of the flood. He tells me, I'm about to push you into the dream phase. You're going to have the dream phase and then the analytical phase, and, you'll be here through the night. And I said, okay. So I buckled up for the ride, and he gave me that third capsule, and just the next thing I know, I'm ataxic. I'm trying to sit up. I feel like I'm falling off a cliff. I try to lean back. I feel like I'm falling off a cliff backwards. It's just hard to describe, but no muscle coordination. So you just really have to just lay back, relax, close your eyes, and just get immersed in the dream. But it's very therapeutic. It's everything coming to the surface you need to deal with. For me, it was the cycles of life. It was the ego construct, little patterns that I do, things like that. Why I do what I do.
Yeah.
Why these things don't serve me. How these things don't serve me. And looking at it in ways I'd never thought about before. I'd never really thought about it in that way. So I just, and you lose sense of time. Time gets dilated at some points. At others, it's just, I don't know. And you really don't remember a whole lot after you do the flood. But I do remember those points, that I lost track of time. Heavy visuals, you forget stuff like that. But I do remember the profound sense of who I was as a being. And that's what struck me the hardest. I said, I felt more connected then than I've felt ever. And of course, I guess a similar experience would be the 5-MeO DMT, the methyltryptamine. There was a presence, a sense of who I was during that experience as well. So,
well, and let's talk a little bit about that, because you and I talked about it back and forth in a few messages, things like that I definitely wanted to get into that because, like I said earlier, my wife, when she heard I was doing this episode, assumed the fact that I would be using DMT on air, which I was like, kudos to you for knowing me so well that I would be willing to do that, and I am willing to do that should the opportunity arise. But it's one of those that
we may have to get on Delta Light down here for Dallas.
Yeah,
up to Austin. Help you out.
Because I would be interested, much like I'm interested to hear myself. I still haven't gone through all of those tapes that I was on with the music that I created in an altered state. My brother recorded all of those episodes of me describing the music on air.
Right.
I don't remember how I described it to this day, so I haven't archived all of them, but I can't wait to hear what I sounded like describing the music and its creation. And that's one reason why I would want to chronicle that, because I would want an unabridged record. I would want to go back and listen to myself later and hear the things that I was saying.
Oh, I bet that would be a revelation. Yeah.
You know, and be able to even break that down. Is that something that y'all do on a regular basis within treatment?
Well, we encourage people to write. We encourage people to write about their experiences. I'm not going to say they do that all the time. Usually they're just trying to recover. But, you know, later on, if you have some time, a friend of mine shared a trip report, and he's a really good writer, and he wrote it right after an ayahuasca ceremony.
Nice.
He literally did it 2 days back, and he wrote it down. I said, tell me, share it with me.
Yeah.
And he did. It's nice enough to do that. I could share it anonymously with you. I could read it out to you later.
Sure.
I can pull that now.
And it's absolutely. I would love to hear some personal experience of that, because, like I said, I would love to do a broadcast during an ayahuasca ceremony, just so that an ayahuasquera could explain what is actively going on.
You know, I was telling you my friend who's done several of the ayahuasca trips, and she said that some of these, that they actually make music, and they're playing music, and there's recordings of this, and she says it's the most beautifulest music like you'll hear. Yeah. She's like, it's amazing.
Yeah. And that's often the case. I'll pull it up and read it to you.
Yeah.
I'll just have located it on Messenger here. But this you know, he writes really well, and he tells his experience, and it's similar in a lot of ways to an Ibogaine experience, but very different in a lot of ways too. But the profound sense of self is definitely there. Let me pull that up. And should have had this beforehand. I didn't even.
That's all right. We just kind of went into it there, and
that's how we rabbit hole.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so organic.
Well, we're all just kind of hanging out. So,
but at the same time, you know, just talking about Ibogaine and its uses, and the fact that it's now being viewed as a means for therapy. How long has that been going on here in the United States as far as research?
Well, it's been going on for, I'd say, at least about 25 years.
Oh, wow.
I spoke with a gentleman. He's literally been involved in the Ibogaine field, he said, for 25 years. And he's somebody I literally talked to about 6 years ago, something like that. And, you know, I remembered him. He uses kind of an alias name in the community, but he's a very educated man, very, very, you know, really nice guy. But so it's been around a while. The gentleman that discovered Ibogaine was named Howard Lotsof, and it was discovered by accident. Howard Lotsof was a heroin addict.
Well, tell us the story of its finding.
Okay, Howard Lotsof was basically out of heroin one day. And a friend of his suggested he try something he was working with called Ibogaine, or Iboga. So he gives him some of this Iboga, he says, you're going to have a trip on it. Well, he had a trip, all right. He had a very psychedelic trip. But at the end of the trip, he realized in the next day or so, he didn't crave opiates anymore. There was no withdrawal. It was over. And so he became at that time, he became like one of the biggest advocates for Ibogaine there was. You know, still, I don't think there's been many people like him. But he's considered the founder of Ibogaine, the discoverer of Ibogaine, for use of treating an opiate addiction or other addictions like that.
Sure.
So it's a very fascinating story. It really is. But yeah, consequently, we were given a tool, and we put it in our handbag, and it's a tool that's far ahead of the curve. It's far more effective than traditional rehab or detox.
Yeah.
With it, it gives people a chance. It gives people a real chance. People that have been to rehab 20 times, they'll go and do an Iboga flood, and that's it.
Yeah.
They're in recovery for life after that. And that's truly, truly.
Yeah.
And I see this all the time.
I read quite a few stories when doing some research in preparation from this episode online. Many people's testimonials about that. And, you know, I lived in Maine for quite a while, which has quite the opioid epidemic up there.
Right.
And It's the horrible fact of methadone clinics, things like that, where we are literally, like I was telling Steve-O earlier,
right.
We wonder why there's a problem and why people have gone to other sources like Oxy and things like that to feed their their habit for heroin.
Yeah.
It's because they're given something like methadone that is absolutely tricking their body into thinking that they're getting what they need.
It's just a substitute.
Well, I'll tell you too, Stephen, we have another scourge, and it's called Suboxone.
Yeah.
It's in addition to meth. And when I was doing my nursing part, I set up a Suboxone practice for a doctor friend of mine. He had, at that time, you had to have a special license just to prescribe Suboxone from the DEA. Well, he had one of these licenses, and he was, I believe, the only person in Tyler at that time that could prescribe Suboxone. So he's like, if you'll help me set up this practice or help me set up this, Suboxone program, I'll employ you. So I did that, and then, of course, now I'm working off my karma. For doing that. But yeah, Suboxone is just a nasty drug. It's just a really nasty drug. It's like the others. It's just, I do believe in MATs. What's called methadone-aided therapy or methadone-aided treatment, or using Suboxone on methadone, they're both considered MATs. Treatments. So I do believe in that as a harm reductionist. That's the harm reductionist part of me coming out, because I'd much rather see somebody do that than stick a needle in their arm.
Sure.
I know how the infection rate goes up. Just all kinds of things. Overdose can literally happen in just a second. You can't get the needle out of your arm. There's no time to get naloxone. Yeah. It's just bad. So I do believe in it, but at the same time, you're maintained for life, and they're not going to let you go.
Yeah.
They're not going to let you go. It's a moneymaker for them.
Yep.
And I tell people all the time, to do an Ibogaine treatment, you have to be literally on a short-acting opiate for 28 days if you're on methadone, 21 days if you're on Suboxone. Of course, it's subjective. It might be a shorter time, but that's kind of the standard rule. So anyway, these people go to the methadone doctor that they're getting the methadone from. They can't get off of it. He will not prescribe a short-acting opiate. And, it's a tough situation. I hear this all the time. I can't get a prescription from my doctor. He won't let me have a prescription.
Yeah.
And, I'm going to go to withdrawal. And I'm like, well, that's not acceptable. And, we're not going to treat you on withdrawal. Now, if we get you down to Mexico, we can give you OxyContin until you do the treatment. But, yeah, you're facing 28 days, and of course that's cost prohibitive if you come to Mexico and do it with us.
Sure.
We're having to pay for our OxyContin. We're having to pass that on to you. We're not going to profit on supplying you with OxyContin until you can have enough time to be able to do the Ibogaine. We're not going to do that, but still, it's expensive for us.
Absolutely.
I think we have to pay for this medicine, and we have to pay a premium. So basically. It's just a really sad thing. You hear all these people on Suboxone. These are kids. These are kids that are facing the rest of their life on Suboxone or methadone.
Yep.
And they're not pain patients. They're for no other reason. They're just heroin addicts. But that's why I want this stuff to be legalized. That's why I'm an advocate for the legalization of Ibogaine and legal Ibogaine clinics in the United States. Yeah. Because there's far too many. And one other thing about that. The Iboga is, there's some parts of it that are inherently unsafe if you're not using it in the hands of an experienced provider that knows how to dose it. Because people have died in the past using Ibogaine. People that didn't know how to dose. People that didn't know what the dose was. Yeah. And left bodies in motel rooms, literally. Of course, now, in a clinical setting, you hardly ever hear of things like that because, it's just down to a science. Yeah. But yeah, it's out there, and it can ring up in certain places. I won't say who on the internet or where, but they can get stuff imported. This. This. There's an Iowa movement. They're getting this stuff from somewhere. Yeah. But I think it's good. But in the case of Iboga, I do discourage it. I have a lot of friends that are active in the ayahuasca community, DMT, and I actively promote that. But on the other hand, the Iboga, I'm like, no. I've heard too many people having an experience where they have a pacemaker put in.
Yeah, only under the care of a practitioner.
Yeah. Right, only under the care of a practitioner. But there are some people out there that, kind of know what they're doing. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, I think that particular psychedelic should be used clinically.
Yeah.
And maybe, or, if you want the Behuidi initiation, go to Mexico or Costa Rica or Africa. There's plenty of clinics out there that do that. Or, facilities called retreats usually that will do that for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think be handled that way over, just coming here and dusting each other like we do with ayahuasca.
Yeah, right.
Ayahuasca, ballgame. But you were interested, the one reason I thought about sharing this little trip note with you, if you will.
Yeah.
And excuse me to the person that wrote it if you hear this.
Let's not use any names whenever we read it.
No, I didn't. Yeah. But you were interested in an ayahuasca experience. What that was like. So I thought about this, and I thought I might share this with you.
Sure.
Okay. Last night, July 1st, 2018, at 9 p.m., I began my 8th ayahuasca ceremony. It was only my second time working with this particular ayahuasquero whom I had ceremony with the night before. The previous night, I had almost no experience with the medicine, but was tired and felt very, very heavy, both physically and emotionally. That wasn't the first time I had little or no experience from the medicine and chalked it up to simply becoming unfamiliar with this fruit. The next night, I would do more. Mind you, he's writing this right after an ayahuasca trip. The day of the second ceremony, I woke up still feeling heavy. I wanted to cry all day, but didn't understand why. It was like all of the trauma of my life was bubbling to the surface. This looming feeling had been going on and off for a week now, growing in intensity. Before the ceremony began, I sat outside in the sun, and meditated for hours, stilling my mind and readying my heart for the night's journey. As the time came to take the medicine, I felt confident that I would be able to face anything with courage and overcome any fears that lay dormant in my mind. I was determined to pay the price for transformation. That's what I said in my Ibogaine. When the time came, I took by far the strongest dose I've ever taken of the medicine. Unlike other brews I had in the past, this batch was from the very bottom and was thick, sandy, and extremely bitter. We sat in silence in absolute darkness for what seemed like half an hour, but I wasn't feeling anything yet. Eventually, the shaman began singing the traditional Ibogaine. Soon after that, I began feeling a subtle effect. Eased onto the floor to lay down. I spread my arms out and asked the medicine to heal my body and mind, to rid me of any traumas and bring to the surface what was hidden within me. I also asked it to be gentle on me, as I always do, and thank the spirit of the medicine for its love and healing. The first quarter of the night went relatively smoothly. I was barely able to move, but felt embraced by a childlike appreciation, of dreamy magic I was experiencing. I thought about how miraculous it is to be embodied, and yet have no idea what the body does for us. Amazing. I hugged my body and thanked it for carrying me through this life, for all the thankless work it does day in and day out. The medicine was becoming very strong at this point, but I felt very happy and was able to enjoy the songs. The shaman even sang me a happy birthday song. It sounded Native American, using a ceremonial drum. The medicine seemed to be lasting a long time, but I was told that because we drank from the bottom of the brew, where all the thick sand-like vine was, that it takes longer to digest and therefore lasts longer. So I buckled up for the ride. Then the medicine started taking it up a notch. The intensity grew overwhelmingly, and my body began flopping around uncontrollably. I stayed calm and relaxed into the process. Then I began being pulled into a dark space in my mind. Subtle visions of hell emerged. I quickly recognized what was happening and tried to find the light, pleading with the spirit to protect me and be gentle. But she gave me no mercy. My mind quickly went into utter confusion and torment. I felt as if I was losing my mind, my grip on reality. I possessed, under the spell of an overwhelmingly powerful dark force. This went on for what seemed like hours, and because it was lasting so long and so relentlessly, I began to fear I would never come back. Time dilated, and minutes felt like eternity. And this isn't much longer. I went in and out of being in a black void, tormented by my deepest fears, to coming back to the room where I was in, unable to remember where I was and who I was at times, pleading to God to have mercy on me and bring me into the light. I begged continuously and eventually surrendered to what was happening. I repeated, I surrender, over and over again in my mind, and laid on the ground, face down in prostration. My deepest fears are losing my mind and being lost in an ocean of torment, of being in hell. These fears became my reality, and I had nothing to save me except my own mind. And then he goes on to say, the medicine whips me around, unable to hold on to any reality, feeling utter despair. But by the end of it, Chris, he comes into a place where he's feeling his joy come back in the next few days. And the point why I read this to you is to tell you that Ibogaine does a similar thing. It takes you to a place where you just face your fears. And that's why I wanted to read this, because this gentleman shared this with me and said this was the most terrifying experience I've ever had on ayahuasca. And I said, well, share that with me, because I've shared a similar thing on facing fears. And that's what a lot of these psychedelics do. You just face yourself. You face your own demons. That's what the analytical phase of the Ibogaine experience is. So, I letting me read that to you. It's pretty descriptive, and it's one of the best descriptions I've heard of ayahuasca.
And that was incredibly descriptive.
Yeah.
And like I said, that's one reason why if I had that experience at this point in life, I would probably want to be wearing a microphone. I would want to be wearing a microphone through the whole thing so that afterward I could actually go back and listen to that experience and understand it from a different point of view entirely.
Right.
And I think in the future we might do that, therapeutically. I think in the future, when this could be accessed in an office somewhere, under a therapist's guidance. Why not? Why not record this session and view it later and continue to grow from that experience?
Exactly. And see that that raw essence of yourself pulled out. See how viscerally you were actively reacting to the things that you're, like I was saying earlier, faced with. There was a reason why I never used LSD or mushrooms or anything like that. Like, after any great tragedy, like after I failed a test in college or after I had a fight with a friend or anything, like, I never did that.
Right.
It's disrespectful to the experience. B, you're setting yourself up. Like, you were setting yourself up to experience that bad trip. And are you ready for that? Like, are you really ready for a real visceral experience now? Are you ready to process something while in that state of mind? And I think that's what most people, hear about, and B, fear. That experience, because it does literally lay yourself bare. Like most of these substances, they are high-powered hallucinogens. They access different parts of our brain. You can look at live-action MRIs of the brain under their influence, and quadrants of our brain that do not typically interact start talking back and forth and light up with great abundance.
Right.
It's like studies they've done. They've done active magnetic resonance with the DMT.
Yeah. And
everything's just lighting up everywhere. Neurons are connecting, and maybe that's where we get the term connection that we like to use so often in this world of psychedelia. We talk about how connected we feel, connection to each other, connection to source, connection to everything, So it may be the neurons firing that are connecting to each other.
And it's interesting that you even say that, because like I was telling Steve-O before the show started, if you look, there is a long history of psychedelic use in the therapeutic field. LSD in and of itself started for that purpose. Ecstasy, MDMA, was the love drug. Mm-hmm. It is whenever it went through its first clinical trials and everything, it was commonly used in the late 70s, early 80s by marriage therapists, things like that, in session, because people felt that mutual connection with each other when using it. And it was a great way for couples to reconnect.
I'll tell you something, too. What I've noticed in the psychedelic community, In Dallas, for instance, they're a tribe, and they're literally brothers to each other, sisters to each other, and that's how they address each other. And they live it, they feel it, they love each other. I mean, that's how they live. That's how they live. That's how their lives are transformed. They realize their ego's gone. They're just sisters and brothers to each other, and I just love that so much. That way of living, that service to others, the service to others, part of them just really comes out. When they go and do Sapo ceremonies, they'll tell each other, it's a pleasure to serve you. It's a pleasure to serve you. And it just amazes me. It just amazes me, these spiritual people. And that's true spirituality. Yeah. I'm sorry, but that's spirituality.
Well, and that's just it. It's the process of seeking every day. It's the process of trying to be a better person every day and realizing that we alone have that responsibility. And like you said, coming to the reality of the things that you need to get rid of that are literally weighing you down.
Yeah.
The things that caused you to use to begin with. And it's interesting, just the field that you were in and the experience that you were sharing. Because like I said, I work a lot of conferences, and one that I worked in the last year was for a huge group of lawyers. And one of their big things was about, one of their big meetings was about alcoholism. Because apparently it is rampant in the law community because of the long hours and the isolation and everything else. And I myself have had numerous family members in the healthcare field, things like that. And Nurse Jackie was a very interesting show that kind of showed some of the underbelly of a lot of the use of drugs by people that drive EMT vans, are paramedics. It's a very high stress field, and it's right there and it's readily available.
And it's considered an occupational hazard, literally.
Yeah.
Narcotic use is an occupational hazard in nursing, if you're a medical doctor, it's an occupational hazard. You have easy access.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen people have their narcotic keys taken away and they can't get into the narcotic cabinet because they're under what's called a TPAP, or, the Texas Program of Rehabilitation for Nurses. It's just almost laughable, but it's not. It's very sad.
Yeah.
To go and find a nurse might see you passed out in the bathroom because you're shooting at them wrong, or he, And it happens a lot, Chris. It happens a lot. So, but that's the nice thing about Ibogaine too. There's relief for those people as well. Yeah. You can be a person, get Ibogaine treatment. You can be off the street, get Ibogaine treatment. Well, now it's a little bit cost prohibitive for some people, but a lot of people have family to help them to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, and quite a few people, fortunately, do have loving family to help them through addiction, help them through things, help them find treatment. And the sad fact is that there aren't a lot of research studies going on into these alternative treatments, into things like I was saying earlier, the fact that there are studies coming out abounding left and right. I post a lot of news. I follow a crap ton of news.
Right.
And if you don't follow it 24/7, you're going to miss it.
You're going to miss something.
But that's one reason why I archive it all on the Dudes and Beer Facebook page and on the website here and there, is so that these articles don't disappear. There's always a link. Like I can show, look, there it is. There's the study that came out of BBC talking about how magic mushrooms are being used for multiple personality disorder treatment and depression and anxiety, and things like that. And it's amazing how many people are finding healing with these things that have been stigmatized for years because of recreational use.
That's got to change. I mean, we've got to have an awareness that these medicines are available. And, I posted something to a forum not too long ago, and I used the words our responsibility. It's our responsibility. People that use these medicines, work or just to explore self, it's our responsibility to bring this awareness to the general public. Now, there's a way to do it, and there's a way not to do it.
Absolutely.
You can't just just be out there with it sometimes, you know. But yeah, I mean, if we slowly promote awareness, like we're slowly legalizing, you know, some things we're legalizing. Yeah. I think we'll get there eventually. I think it'll take a long time for Ibogaine, honestly, or some of the other things. But these are real medicines. They're highly vibrational medicines. Yeah. They're medicines that really connect you. And I think a lot of people fear that. I think a lot of people in power fear that. That will kind of...
And, you know, like I said, I'm not going to necessarily say that is an unhealthy fear. You know? Right. Not a lot of people are ready for that spiritual bearing that it is, that literally being bared naked unto yourself. Even your own precepts of what you set up as to what you are broken. And these are the lies that you've told yourself in order to create your own identity.
You have to be prepared.
Right. Yeah, and I asked the gentleman that wrote that note I read to you a few minutes ago. I said, what did you feel out of that? And he comes back with the term existential loneliness.
Nice.
I don't think most people handle that. I don't think most people can handle that kind of feeling. Now, he's brave enough to do it, and he wants to do it to transform. But yeah, most people I don't think aren't quite ready to live that way or acknowledge that particular kind of thing in their lives.
Right. Yeah. And
how we are we're in the Bible Belt. You know, we're deeply staunch religion, you know, in many cases, and it's just I think it would just be too hard on a lot of people. Well, so we've got to go easy on this stuff.
And that's exactly what I was saying earlier. Is that my experiences, and I can't speak for anybody else's experiences, but my experiences were coming to understand a deeper understanding of what I knew. And searching for that. So I was already open to that experience of kind of being broken down to begin with and being ready to be rebuilt in a new way. And you really do have to be prepared for that. You have to be prepared. Your mind is going to do something totally different than what you like at that point. You really have to be in a place to be passenger. And that's why, like, whenever I did go out and get psychedelics, I didn't use them other places that I was going to be going somewhere or driving or doing anything like that. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be anywhere near that. Because I'm ready for something else to take control of me and to have that visceral experience where sometimes you are literally laid bare unto yourself and a whole new understanding comes to be. And it can be some hard realities. It can be even just the experiences I've had have been enough to personally change me, the way I view the world, the way I view my interaction with the world, everything. So I can't imagine what it would be like to go through an ayahuasca ceremony with the same intent, to go through a peyote ceremony. I would want to go through the proper ceremony to respect that.
Right. And a lot of people that do, I don't think most people realize this. I think they think of people that do psychedelics are, just out there doing recreational, psychedelics or something. There's really not the case at all. Most of the people that are doing the psychedelics are searching for themselves in some way. They're using healthy respect of the medicine to guide them. And they do it in a responsible manner. They do it in groups. They do it in the proper ritual or the ceremony, if you will. I don't even like to say the word ritual. It's confused with witchcraft and things like that.
And I understand that, but I'm also brought up Catholic. I'm here to tell you, it's a ritual. Yeah, it's a rite.
Yeah, well, right. Then
the book says that on the cover.
But yeah, I mean, really, though, people that are doing this, they're gonna seek out the most authentic ceremony they can find. You know, the guys that are telling me they want to do Iboga, when they're in the psychedelic community, they're telling me they want to do Iboga, but they want to go and do the Bahweedi initiation, right?
Yeah.
You know, so. And what that is, that's a rite of passage. Stephen's looking at me kind of funny.
What's the difference? Or
explain to us what that is. Explain to our audience. I of course, have done my Google stalking on the topic over the last many days.
Right. Mr. Google, Mr. NSA over here.
So what it is, the Bahweedi tribe in Gabon, or down in the area of Cameroon in Africa, for thousands of years, they've ingested like large amounts of Iboga root bark. And it's their rite of passage. That's how they come of age. And that's how they connect with their spiritual ancestors. And that's how they develop their sense of community. And it's all built on Iboga.
Yeah.
And that's the substance they use to get to the spiritual place they need to be to make that connection.
Yeah.
Simply put.
And it's interesting how that same rite of passage is echoed with the traditional use of ayahuasca in South America. How that traditional use is also used even for coca. In South America, like, you know, they still trade coca leaves openly in the market. It's one of the only ways you can make it up the Andes without passing out, is to chew coca leaves.
Yeah, chew the coca leaves.
You remember, even our vice president chewed coca leaves. Yeah, because you remember people were joking for weeks that he could do whatever he wants. He's not going to be able to pass any drug test.
When you use plant medicines that way, we use a term called entheogen.
Okay.
Entheogen is a plant-derived, substance, but it's a plant-derived substance people are using for a pragmatic reason, or it's more than likely, though, a spiritual reason, a spiritual purpose. So, the pragmatic thing, using the coca leaves to get up the hill, you increase your lung capacity and all this good stuff. So, we use that term entheogens, and that's to separate these substances from the term of recreational.
Yeah.
These are not recreationally used substances.
Yeah.
Or not for the most part.
Yeah.
I mean, people might do some magic mushrooms, but more than likely, these people are probably going to go down the path of psychedelia eventually, and probably grow as humans.
Well, if they did use mushrooms, it would be in a religious sense. It would be in a ceremonial sense. Even the use of peyote and vision quests with the Navajo and other Indian tribes was used under ceremonial coming of age ceremonies, where when you were 17, that they put you in a hole with some peyote, and you enjoy a few days in a hole out in the desert with some peyote, and you talk to your ancestors.
Become the lizard king, huh?
You become a different person, and you emerge somebody else.
The reptilian.
And it's just interesting how these stories and uses of things, from mimosa bark to even willow, back in ancient times, for crying out loud, we use it as aspirin nowadays. Proven use, but people used to boil willow bark for cramps, all kinds of stuff.
Wow.
It was a commonly used analgesic.
Right.
So it was used as a tonic, all kinds of stuff. And these things are being found all the time to be useful for modern drugs, everything else. As I mentioned before, like I'm a huge fan of the show MASH, and I was explaining to my wife, like, she's now a big fan of it as well. One of the best shows in television history, such a great show, so well written and directed. But one of the things that they reference all the time is curare. And curare was literally a paralytic that was used on poison darts.
I tell you, we use a drug in the hospitals to paralyze people that's very similar to curare.
It's based off of curare.
Wow.
It is a synthetic of it.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Yeah,
it's very
but it was used to great avail during wars and stuff like that in the surgical theory, because it would paralyze people without fully putting them under.
Right.
You know, they wouldn't have to go through full anesthesia and everything else, where if they were in such an imbalance of health that it would literally risk their life to fully put them under.
Yeah,
you know, you could at least deaden the whole body and deaden their muscular response to anything that you're doing.
Right.
They wouldn't feel it.
Yeah.
Nothing. But it was a drug used on poison darts to paralyze prey. That's where it came from.
Stephen, I'm sorry, Chris. Have you seen? Maybe you've seen it too, Stephen. It's a movie called Serpent and the Rainbow.
Oh God, yes,
yeah.
I love that movie.
Oh yeah,
I love that movie.
You know, he discovers tetrodotoxin, but the journey he's on to discover it is just amazing.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a really cool movie. I think all your audience.
I would love to do a whole episode on that movie because, if you'd like, I'd love to have you on to talk about it because it is one of those. It was a journey of modern medicine. It really was to prove the fact that zombie powder existed.
Right.
You know, they wanted to call it Zombinol. I've heard.
Yeah.
Tennessee. I don't think they ever. Well, I know they didn't ever do that, but Zombinol.
Zombinol.
But yeah, it was like the skin of certain toads.
Pufferfish was
combined
involved,
with pufferfish venom.
Yeah.
A girl posted something the other day, and I don't know if this is true or not, but she just posted something and said, "Yeah, I just heard that dolphins pass around pufferfish like joints." And
I heard that.
From it.
I heard that.
No,
too.
I have heard of that behavior
I've heard of it.
That they use them. Yeah.
They kind of chew on it and pass it back and forth. Right?
It's a common thing in the animal kingdom. Like I said earlier, you know, the tales of Siberian deer.
They all use entheogens, don't they?
Yeah, and I mean even chimps in Africa have been shown to purposefully find overripe fruit and get drunk.
And get drunk.
Like they know how it affects them, and they wait for it to get overripe. Like they wait for it to just be like hanging next to the ground, and they know like, all right, it's time. And like you can watch all kinds of footage of like baboons and everything else just like getting crazy lit on eating like overripe plums because they purposefully wait for it.
That's why he snips his fingers and then falls off the branch.
It's like, but they purposefully get into this altered state. They purposefully use this for that reason. It's kind of like denying that chimpanzees use shoots to fish termites out of mounds, like that they use tools. They fashion tools. You know, it's wild. But these things happen, and it's interesting to know that these medicines, these things that have been used for generations, sometimes thousands of years by people, like the tribes that use ayahuasca in South America.
Yep.
They have been using this plant, this combination of plants. It's not just one plant. It's a very delicate balance and stew of different plants at different times to release the chemicals because they're all so volatile that if they went together, it would just destroy it. Like they would just volatilely destroy each other.
Wow.
You know, the interesting thing about ayahuasca, for instance, how did they know this? How did they know one plant has a monoamine oxidase inhibitor, and that's the only way to activate the other plant component that's in there to make it bioavailable to the body and able to experience the actual effects of the chemical.
Well,
how did they know?
According to their stories, their gods.
Oh yeah, here we go.
Told them this.
Well,
this knowledge was shared to their shamans from the other side.
Yes. Yeah. The extra-political part of me says yes, that's absolutely true.
Just like the Dugon tribe can point to Ceres and they can't see it.
But that's also one of those. It's an unquantifiable Byron, and that's the issue that I think we ultimately deal with, which is what I was saying earlier. I think unfortunately, so many people would be closed to this as an option for treatment because of its harsh reality. There's nothing you can really expect. Nothing kind of it. You're delving into the deepest, darkest realms of yourself in order to find that out,
to cleanse yourself,
to purge that.
But I'll tell you this. People that do this, and they good plan in mind, they always come back and they'll call me up and they'll say, Byron, I had the most amazing experience.
Yeah.
It's over and over and over I hear that. Byron, I had the most amazing experience. Thank you so much for helping me find this. And I'm like, no, I served this mess, and it's a thing of service. That's what Iboga wakes up in people. You serve other people. You serve other people in everyday life if you can. You seek to grow. You seek to do that. But yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's not an easy thing to do, but it's the most painless way to detox. You tell an addict you're about to have to detox, and of course they're thinking withdrawal. And that's like hell on earth for an addict.
Oh yeah. Well, especially with certain drugs like heroin. Like there are studies, especially with heroin and stuff, where the effect of the drug, the dopamine uptake in your brain begins just during preparation of use.
Right.
Yeah.
Before you even start using, your brain starts getting high.
That's what I heard.
Out of sheer expectation. And that becomes such a deeply ingrained part of you. It becomes such a rote part of muscular memory. It takes a jarring experience sometimes to rid that
just the prepping
of
and
yourself.
Just getting excited. You're gonna get it.
Yeah, that in and of itself begins the reaction in the brain of getting high.
Yeah, ain't that crazy? Woo.
And it's a really odd phenomenon, but it is recorded.
It's chemical conditioning. I mean, you conditioned yourself to a Pavlovian response.
I was just about to say, you're ringing a bell and salivating. It is Pavlov's dog all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
And
exactly.
That kind of reminds me in a way when I'm craving a cigarette or something. Say I'm in the vehicle, that's when I like to smoke while I'm driving. And then so like if I get that craving, like, oh man, I really want a cigarette and I'm going to get it. Once I get it in my hand, that craving's already kind of gone.
To be honest, Steve, I'll be honest with you. Number one, give me a cigarette. Number two, Tuesdays are really the only time that I smoke cigarettes. It's really also one of the only times that I drink anything more than maybe a beer or something while I'm like grilling something outside. I don't really like drink a whole lot. It's really my designated night for both.
Right.
And that's what I've put myself to. And that's the boundary that I've given myself. I, at one point, smoked better than a pack of cigarettes a day in life.
The funny thing about smoking and Ibogaine, most people that come to use Ibogaine, they're going to be smoking because they're addicts. That it just goes hand.
It is the crutch of crutches.
I don't know why.
The crutch of crutches.
Why are we out smoking with the surgeons?
Go to any meeting of any anonymous group.
Yeah, right.
And it's coffee and cigarettes and donuts, my friend. Those are the vices that everybody allows as much as you want.
The hardest one to quit. It's the hardest one to quit. And people are saying, well, I'm going to do this blood dose and I'm going to get off everything. I'm like, well, take one at a time. I'm going to be real. Take one at a time. Maybe come back later and do the whole thing over just for the smoking. And set that as an intent. I'm sorry. And they may still need some aftercare and some really good, whatever.
Well,
but there's some really exciting things going on with Ibogaine too. I want to tell you about that.
Absolutely, go right ahead.
Yeah. There's something. There's a guy that's presenting some research here in a couple of days. Of course, we just had the LA Symposium of Science on Psychedelics.
Oh, wow.
Or Psychedelic Science Symposium.
How did that not end up on my newsfeed?
Yeah, exactly.
That's an event that's held every year, and of course, this past year, Dennis McKenna speaks. Terrence.
Got to get some of that.
Yep.
Yeah, so he spoke there, and several others, but that was going on. But then at the same time, I was learning of some research that some people around that conference or symposium were presenting, and it's basically microdosing iboga and using cannabis with it, which I found very interesting. And, microdosing of Iboga is a whole unexplored topic, really.
Yeah.
I mean, or yet to be explored. A lot of people have done some work in it, certainly. But, I mean, we have further to go. This guy's presenting option 3 now, and we're calling it option 3.
Yeah.
It's microdosing Iboga with cannabis, and it seems to do some different things. It seems to have some different healing properties as well. So, I mean, there's just a lot of unexplored things, Chris, Stephen. There's just a lot of things out there that we just don't know yet. That's the exciting thing. Hey, every day I learn something. Every day I learn something.
Well, and it's only through personal trial. It's only through personal experience that we get these. It's quite literally what science is based on. It's what studies are based on is anecdotal evidence. Is people taking either placebo or real, one of the two.
It's real scientific method.
And
all science. This is a real one.
Yeah, and that I think it's something that we talk about on this show all the time is the religion of science, and much like I was saying earlier, especially you were saying being brought up in the Bible Belt, being brought up the way I was brought up, Catholic. I mean, I spent my first year in college in the seminary, things like that. I had a certain construct of reality that became deconstructed as I grew spiritually, and reconstructed in a different, deeper form, much more connected than I ever was in many aspects, but disconnected in some other ways.
Let me guess. Sit next to a Southern Baptist? Stephen?
No.
Oh, me? I grew up Baptist and got all the awards. But I stopped going a long time ago. I got my own, belief, what I mean? And I don't look down on any other beliefs, But, I'm not solely, I'm not strict Baptist,
My religion is one thing. My spirituality is something completely different.
Yeah, somewhere or other.
That's so true, and I wish most people thought that way.
Yeah,
realize that that's the way to really kind of take this. We all have different.
The two share things, but they're also vastly different.
They're all very different. They are vastly,
and
like you said,
it's one of those. I think we have to break a lot of social mores. I think, like we were saying before show, we are in the midst of breaking a lot of these social mores right now. As far as even medical use of cannabis, I mean, good God, 5 years ago, Sanjay Gupta, after he left, or right as he was ending his tenure at World Health Organization, was saying that he was just provided with scientific evidence that has existed for years but was hidden from him about medical uses for marijuana and actual studies that show that it is medically beneficial.
I believe
and he was like, my entire opinion on this changes.
Right.
Because I'm now finally shown studies that are not in the vested interest of the people whose vested interest is to keep marijuana out of study.
Right. And you have to respect Sanjay Gupta. He
Absolutely. One of the world's best doctors. He wasn't the head of the World Health Organization for no good reason.
Right.
We didn't elect him there. He wasn't put in by somebody in power in the United States. You know what I mean? He was elected by the world as one of the best, foremost doctors in the world.
He was.
And when even he was provided with studies that were biased toward one way,
right,
and not provided with the other evidence, his opinion, of course, could only swing one way. And he was like, I have to utterly change my medical opinion about all of this because this data has been obfuscated. It's been kept from public eye. And to see those things, I think we just lost Byron on Skype. But to see those things is, let's connect via audio here. You there? All right.
Ah, here we go.
But yeah, to know that kind of stuff happens at that highest level, that the obfuscation of laboratory data, despite the fact that the studies have been done by independent labs that have no vested interest whatsoever, that information is still obfuscated. So it's stymied the research in a lot of things like Ibogaine and the use of mushrooms, and that's why these studies are coming out from places like Iceland and things like that, where they don't necessarily have the restrictions that we have, and they're able to use them in clinical use, and they're seeing some great results from things that traditionally have been used for thousands of years in religious ceremony to center people.
Right.
To help them find a center to the world and their impact in the world around them.
This is nothing new.
Precisely what we are medicating people for on the daily. Like even I myself, like I was telling you, have the issue with my medications going on right now, and
they just don't want to admit.
We
this
just
stuff.
lost Byron again.
It's the pharmaceutical corporations. You got Bristol Myers, Pfizer, all these. If they can't benefit in their way, it's like
So
what's going on with
so
this?
there you are. Well. We're right up close to the close of things. I would like you to wrap things up with where you hope Ibogaine will go shortly, where people can go to find out more information about Ibogaine treatment for not just themselves but their loved ones, people who are seeking that option to go one step further in their treatment and find a new path in life. Before we let you go ahead and talk about all that.
Okay. Well, basically, where I'd like to see Ibogaine go in the near future, I'd love to see it legalized here. I'd love to see clinics open in the United States and treat people in a medically safe, sound setting. I don't think that's going to happen. Because of the blanket ban on psychedelics. It's just not understood.
No. I think we lost your audio there, Byron. Sorry, we lost you at the view of psychedelics.
The blanket of psychedelics.
The blanket of psychedelics.
Okay, like what do I see the world being with psychedelics, or how do I hope it will change? Well, I'd like to see psychedelics lose the stigma. There's a terrible stigma that a lot of people have about psychedelics. They need to be seen as medicines, not drugs, not even called drugs. They are entheogens. They're medicines. They're used medicinally. They're used for the right reasons. They're spiritually transforming. They're transforming of lives.
Yeah.
And this happens every day. I'd like to see more people be aware of that. That's what I would like to see. That's my vision.
Well, and I cannot agree with you more in that as more and more things come out about all of these substances. If anything, a soft medicinal legalization needs to be done for research purposes on them, to be able to open it up at the very least to that, for the use of medicinal research. To ban it in any such way, I think is very irresponsible. Especially seeing a lot of the research that we have coming out now. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Beginnings Ibogaine.
Okay, Beginnings Ibogaine, you can go to the website. It's www.beginningsibogaine.com. You can call me at the 800 number. That'll ring myself or someone else if I'm not available. It's 800-649-2399. Or you can call me personally. I will answer the phone. It's 903-707-0258. My name is Byron Burkhammer, and I am the treatment coordinator and happy to talk with anybody anytime. If you need something, I will talk with you. It's my pleasure to serve other people.
And you cannot get more honest invitation to treatment than that, folks. Sure. And please do hold the line for us, Byron, as we close this episode out. Yes. I'd love to talk with you about something off air. But do hold the line. Thank you so much for being our guest tonight and talking about this very revealing information.
Great information.
In the world of Ibogaine, DMT, things like that. I can't wait to have you on again. Hold the line for us real quick. Always some great stuff, Steve. Always. Oh, my God. I just hung up on him.
We always have such great stuff, man.
I didn't mean to hang up on him.
I mean, information, guests.
That's all right. That was my fault entirely, Byron. I hung up on you instead of just muting you to our audience. But so on that note, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in.
It's the last time I leave Chris at the controls.
Yeah, right? It only took 172 episodes for you to kick me off the control panel.
Yeah, kicking him off, Byron.
But it's finally done. Thousands of hours of airtime, and finally my turn at the controls is conceded. So, on that note, everybody, thank you very much for tuning in tonight. It was such an awesome episode, such revealing information about fantastic treatments, fantastic uses of very traditional medicines that have been around for thousands of years. Like I said in the promo, is it new science or lost knowledge?
Lost knowledge, I say.
You know, I've got to say both. It's definitely a rediscovery of knowledge that has never really disappeared. It's never stopped being used by those indigenous people. They still use it for the same purpose to this day.
We can get over political incorporation hump.
We have to get over our hang-ups, folks. We have to get over the fact, like Drax said whenever he was talking about the sexuality of Ego the Planet, like, you got some hang-ups.
You got some hang-ups.
You got to get past that so that you can have the real conversation. You know, like, and we really do have to get past that ourselves. While we're getting past that, while you're going on and checking out beginningsibogaine.com for more information about Ibogaine and its use as treatment, feel free to stop on by dudesandbeer.com. Check out all of our episodes. Check out HC Universal Network, our official family that we belong to on the internet of podcasts. So until next time, if you can't be good, be good at it. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
To listen to our audio streams or chat with us live, download the official Dudes and Beer app for Android and iDevices, available on Google Play and iTunes markets. For more episodes, content, and information, visit us online at dudesandbeer.com. You can also find our episodes on Breach.tv, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast service. Dudes and Beer is a proud member of the HC Universal Network family of podcasts. For more about our sponsors and other podcasts on this network, visit hcuniversalnetwork.com. Thanks for listening, everybody, and until next time, drink responsibly.